This is Sound Experience, the show that explores the vast world of audio production through the experiences of our guest and the ears of your host, mixing engineer and producer Tim Dolbear.
Hey, welcome back to Sound Experience, yet another edition here powered by Intertalk Radio, your voice of the music biz. I am your host, Tim Dolbear, coming to you live from Eclectica Studios in beautiful Austin, Texas. Before I get started, I want to give a shout out, as I always do. Greatly appreciate the support that we get from sponsors. They keep us going. And first up, the Blackbird Academy, hands-on training for studio and live sound. Actually, the best school in the world, in my opinion. I get to go and teach there every 3 months. It's absolutely the only place I would choose to go if I was to go back and do school. Also, Great River Electronics, from tracking to mastering, and Source Connect by Source Element. They are the people who make it so we can actually do the show remotely. It's really a great setup and has replaced ISDN lines, which we used to use back in the pre-internet days, you could say. Actually, up until recently. So, really, I want to thank you very much for your support and for your emails. And I really appreciate all the positive feedback that we get back. I also appreciate the negative stuff, too. And not that I get that much, but I do appreciate it. Everything gets read by me, not an intern, because, of course, I have no intern. I also want to remind you about my blog. You can find the link on the Sound Experience page on intertalkradio.com. Remember, the blog, one of the cool things we're doing right now is we're rebuilding an MCI Sony quarter-inch 2-track mastering deck, and a lot has happened in the last week, which is really cool. Actually, over the last few weeks. But the new blog just went up yesterday, so check it out when you get a chance. And that's it. Drop me any comments, any questions for future artists. You can drop me emails at tim@timdolbear.com. You can also, of course, on our Facebook page. We love to see questions come in on there, too. And we have a lot of people coming up. That I imagine you'll have a lot of questions for. So let me give you a quick calendar of what we have on the plate. So June 20th, I have musician and engineer Gordon Bahari. He's a friend of mine. He was part of Stevie Wonder's team through, I believe, the late 70s through the 80s. And he's a very successful solo musician. And he's also running Right Touch Mastering, which is based out of two places, in New York City when he's there and in the wine country of California when he's there. So very successful person. And when you hear him speak about audio production, his knowledge and his ear that he has for sound is absolutely stunning. This is a great show you're going to want to tune in for. June 27th, I have 4-time Grammy-winning mastering engineer Joe Palmisio, a good friend of mine. He worked at Sony Battery Studios, I believe it was just called Sony back then, for many years, cutting his teeth, and now owns the place for mastering in Nashville. And he is just one of the best guys in the music industry, and every time I go to Nashville, I get to have dinner with him, which I'm truly blessed that I get to do that. And then July 4th is the following Monday. I'm not really sure what we'll be doing on that. Probably something patriotic. I don't know. July 11th, the following Monday, I have on multi Grammy winning and Grammy Classical Producer of the Year multiple times, Mr. Stephen Epstein will be joining us. And if you don't know the name because you're not following classical music, he's worked with everyone who is everyone in classical music. And the name you'll probably know right off the bat is Yo-Yo Ma. He works on all of his stuff. And Stephen Epstein is absolutely one of the greatest, nicest guys in the music industry, and I think you're really going to enjoy the insight that he has from all the years of experience. So that's July 11th. All right. Well, today, coming up on today's show, we have on the show Moses Avalon, and he's an audio engineer turned producer, turned author, and he has an amazing book that's been out for many years now, entitled Confessions of a Record Producer. And this is a must-have. Currently, the new edition just came out. It's a 5th edition, and he's going to tell us all about it. It's on Howlander Publishing, and we're lucky enough to have him on today. So I'd like to welcome to the program Moses Avalon. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. There are so many questions that I have for you, but the very first thing I wanted to find out is your history a little bit. How did you get into music production?
Well, let's see. I actually worked for a while on Wall Street as a broker, and I hated it. I did it for about 2.5 years and saved up a bunch of money and bought some recording equipment. This was back in the time when very few people had home recording setups. It was very unusual. And my first setup was an 8-track recording setup, and I recorded the bands on my street and taught myself how to engineer and produce. And from there, I decided to go work in a real studio. And I worked in probably, half a dozen of the bigger studios in New York City as a assistant and recording engineer. And then, worked my way up from there and produced a few things here and there. And a number of them did well, so I did a little bit more of that. And then over time, I started to notice a lot of the acts that I worked with and a lot of the clients that I had would confide in me about, even though the fact that they had platinum records, they didn't really have a great deal of money to show for it. It was kind of frightening. Right. You think you grow up with legends and hear superstars and listen to records of people, and the records are selling millions of units, and you're wondering why they're still living, in their mother's basement sometimes. Right. And so they started telling me the stories of how the record deals really work. And I started, after a while, just collecting these stories and writing them down. And I thought, well, someone really should write a book about this. At the time, there were maybe 2 books about the music industry. There was This Business of Music, and there was Don Passman's excellent book, All You Need to Know About the Music Business. And that was it. There's 2 books written by attorneys, basically for attorneys, and no one had written a book from the producer or artist perspective. And as you can probably guess, attorneys aren't terribly critical of their own contributions to the problems in a situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought it was time to write a book from that perspective, and that's why I wrote Confessions of a Record Producer. And it's basically an amalgam of all the stories that I heard from all the artists that I work with as to why they weren't getting their fair share of the pie.
The book is blunt, and I so appreciate reading through this book. And as I finish it up, it's going to go on the coffee table of the studio here, and every client that walks in my door, I'm going to say, buy this book. Because so many of my clients have asked...
a week, I promise them.
Oh, I know, but it's worth it if someone else benefits.
When the book first came out, it was they sent it around to a whole bunch of recording studios, and virtually every studio had the book stolen out of it. It was the most stolen book out of recording studios in 1999, 2000.
That needs to be a little box on the front of the book as a selling point. It means something.
Or maybe
it
just
really
chain
does.
it to the desk.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, so many people over the years always ask me these same questions that are addressed in here, and I'm always giving out tons of, you could say, free advice, but I'm doing it, from the heart. I mean it. I'm trying to help the people I work with because we have a relationship going. And so to see someone put it in a book form where now when someone asks me, I can say, here's the link to Amazon, buy this book, and read every friggin' word in it because it's so to the point and real.
Oh, thank you.
That's all I have to say on it.
Well, musicians hear enough nonsense. I thought that the book should just be straight and to the point and not written with a lot of flowery language or language that tries to sound too erudite. We just need the facts. And so that's how I try to write all my books.
Yep, I learned from going through it myself, having bad things happen, having attorneys take my retainer and basically use up all of my $5,000 retainers, not doing anything but, of course, stuff that didn't mean anything, answering a phone call when I called to go, have you done anything? And they go, no, I have not. Boom, $100, that type of thing. And there's just learning it the hard way is not fun. And so being able to instill this knowledge to people, you're doing an incredible, incredible service. And I'm surprised I had not heard of this book up until this point. So I'm glad to have it. So let's jump into a couple questions that I have for you about various different things. And one being, this is the 5th edition of the book, and I know you talked a little bit in the book about, okay, it's time to crack open edition 4 and update it for all the new things that are happening. Can you give us a rundown of the various different things that you had to address and look into to get this book? Because it had to have been a big undertaking as there's such a twist and turn.
Well, sure. Yeah. most of the changes have to do with changes in the economics of how deals have been structured and how royalties have changed. You know, it used to be a royalty-based deal. Now a lot of deals are what are called 360 deals or multiple rights deals. So a lot of the shifts in the book had to do with the changes of economics because of that. A lot of it had to do with the fact that now most artists don't make a great deal of money off of selling shiny discs. You know, now it's all done through different revenue streams. And
Correct.
Major labels in their contracts have found ways to take the same overreaching deductions that they've always taken from artists, but they've given them new names. And so if you went in without this knowledge, you would go into a negotiation saying, well, I don't want you to take this and I don't want you to take that. And a label will go, okay, you got it. We won't take any of that. But there'll be some new term in there that will do the exact same thing with a new name. And if you don't know what it's called, you'll get screwed the same way.
Exactly. We have about 20 seconds left on this segment. When we come back from the break, let's break down some of those different little areas, as well as I guess we'll dive into some of the definitions of things, too, so to get some people up to speed. And so, yeah, this is going to be thick and it's going to be deep. I hope people are taking notes, and I hope you grab onto the link and buy this book. So, all right, we'll be back here in a minute with Sound Experience. We're on with Moses Avalon, and we will be back in a couple minutes.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element, affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to record on a Grammy award-winning album? Have you ever wondered what it's like to play in front of a stadium crowd? Have you ever wondered what it's like to be on a world tour? I'm Jackie Bertoni, and I've played with the who's who in the music industry, and I've toured the world. Come join my world, behind the velvet rope, and get into the groove on Jackie's Groove. Live 2 p.m. Mondays and available 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit moesguitars.com or their Facebook page. mozeguitars.com, 619-698-1185.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. Vin Village connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. Vin Village is where wine lovers connect.
This is Sound Experience, the show that explores the vast world of audio production through the experiences of our guest and the ears of your host, mixing engineer and producer Tim Dolbear.
Hey, welcome back to Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio, your voice of the music biz. We're on with Moses Avalon talking about his book, Confessions of a Record Producer. I love the subtitle, too, How to Survive the Scams and Shams of the Music Business. Absolutely, that's what this book is about. It's a survival guide. So we were breaking down or going into basically the area of something me and you talked about, which is the more the business changes, the more it stays the same. Can you explain that more in detail?
Sure, absolutely. The revenue streams have shifted around quite a bit, but the dynamics of the business haven't really changed very much. The record label still has the same mandate, which is acquire rights and then exploit rights. And the artist still has the same dynamic, which is protect their rights or sell them for the highest price they can or give up as little as they can in that process. And then once the record is done and those masters are being exploited, then the artist then has to go out and figure out ways to promote that, because the label often will do, not that much. So they'll allocate the resources towards the one or two artists that, out of 10 that they might sign that year, towards one or two artists that seem to be tracking well, and the rest of them kind of fall by the wayside. So even if you get signed to a major label, the odds are still, probably 80%. You're going to have to do a lot of the legwork yourself. Which is why I say, that if you're thinking about trying to get a deal on a major label, you should first ask yourself, is that where you belong? Does your music fit in with the kind of music that they're trying to promote? Because if it's niche or it's not the kind of thing you could hear on the radio, I would say don't bother trying to do that, because you're going to give up an enormous amount of your rights and still have to work your ass off. You may as well work your ass off and keep all those rights and make more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, then what's the difference between a major label, an indie label, and a vanity label?
Well, a vanity label is a label that's owned just by an act. And it's becoming more and more common, especially in the last 10 years. A lot of acts have their own label, and they distribute and they put themselves out, and they just make a deal with one of the larger distributors. I define a major label as one of the, let's call them 38, maybe 40 labels that are either directly owned or controlled by one of the three major distributors, which are Universal, Sony/BMG, and Warner Brothers. So if your label is either directly controlled by one of them or a subsidiary of one of them, I would call you a major label, and I would actually add Concord to that as well. You can throw Disney into that mix as well, but Disney is kind of its own entity because they're not really a record company. They're a multimedia company, and the record industry, record component is only one small part of what they do.
Right.
And an indie label would just be any label that falls outside of that definition.
Okay. Usually when you're talking about indie label, are you also talking about indie labels are labels that have distribution through secondary sources, or these independent labels that are strictly just doing it themselves, electronic distribution?
That's a great question. Indie label is probably one of the hardest terms to define because it can mean different things under different circumstances. And a lot of labels want to call themselves indie labels because it sounds cool and it gives them street cred. Meanwhile, what they actually have is what's called a housekeeping deal with a major label, which means their contract's going to read like a major label's contract, take the same rights as a major label's contract. And the reason for that is because these so-called indie labels, their big goal, in their business plan, their big exit strategy is to one day be bought out by one of the major labels or one of the three major distributors. And this is common in the business. The business goes through a period of expansion where you get lots of these so-called indie labels, and then every 8 or 9 years or so, there's a big roll-up where the three large distributors buy up a ton of these labels and incorporate them into their corporate structure. And if you're one of these indie labels, so-called indie labels, your goal is to be part of that roll-up. Well, you can't be part of that roll-up unless you've acquired the rights that these larger labels want to acquire. And so it's important, I think, for artists to understand if they're being courted by a so-called indie label and they think that because the label calls itself indie that they're going to be able to keep more rights. My suggestion is that you not only read my book, but that you consult, someone who really understands the difference between these different types of contracts, because you may find yourself signing the same type of oppressive deal as you would on a major label, but only getting a tenth of the money.
Yes. So as I think about this, and I'm thinking about, now obviously I've always said major labels are for major artists. So someone like Bruce Springsteen needs a major label. But people starting out don't necessarily do. And I've seen so many artists that I've known that have gone into independent labels, and because they're independent, have just jumped at it thinking this isn't the corporate world, so I can just do my thing and sign with them. And I've seen artists not even get attorneys involved, and attorneys that are on their side, I should say, because obviously there's both type out there. So there's a lot of stuff I noticed in this book that talks about that. It's like, hey, open your eyes to this, which is so important.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. If you're going to give up a whole bunch of rights, you should get a whole bunch of money in exchange for it. And one of my problems with so-called independent labels is they take the same rights. They don't give you a great deal of money. You do get more creative control. That's true, and that's important to some people. But the rights you give up are almost impossible to get back down the line. So be very careful with what you're signing. Read, educate yourself as to how these contracts work. Don't think that it's the lawyer's job to explain that to you or your manager's job to explain that to you, because a lot of times they won't. And in a lot of cases, the attorney, even though you're paying them, the attorney has a conflict of interest, because often the same attorney who's negotiating your recording contract also works for the label on another day. And so the label puts tens of thousands of dollars in that lawyer's pocket every year, whereas you may only put a few $1,000s in that lawyer's pocket every year. And that lawyer knows if he becomes too difficult, if he negotiates too hard on your behalf, if he truly becomes your advocate, the label might not like that, and they might not throw him more of the bigger jobs down the line. So it's important to know where the allegiance of your attorney lies.
That's a new one that I had not heard. That truly is brutal. That is brutal. So what's the difference between getting a publishing deal and getting a label deal?
Well, a label deal is for recorded masters. It's the recordings you make. A publishing deal is for your songs, which are your compositions, the lyrics and the melody. There's two copyrights involved in every sound recording. Every time you hear a song on the radio, you're hearing two copyrights at the same time. One's the recording of the song, and one's the underlying composition, or the lyrics and the melody. So a publishing deal is similar to a record deal or a label deal in that you're exploiting the song and not the recording of the song. How might that take place? Well, you may record an album, but the album maybe did well, maybe didn't do well, but songs on the album might have attracted the interest of other recording artists who might say, I want to do a version of that song. I love that song. Well, that's where a publishing company comes in. Publishing company administrates those rights, and it hopefully promotes the material to other artists and other venues, such as film and television, internet, all kinds of things.
So the benefit of actually having a publishing company also goes beyond that, in the fact that not only do they act as basically the Harry Fox agency does, where they can license it to other people who talk to them and are interested, but hopefully they're out there actively trying to get it placed into film and other areas of mechanical royalties, correct?
That's correct. But that kind of deal that you're describing, it's kind of the publishing deal of the past. These days, what you're describing, I would call an administration deal. And they're vastly different. And often companies that are just administration companies, which basically means they sit back and collect the money. They don't actually go out and do a lot of promoting for you. They will often ask for the same percentages as an actual publisher. This is something I caution my readers about all the time in my newsletters, when I speak publicly, and in my books, which is they may call themselves a publishing deal. They may be asking for publisher-type money, but are they only doing an administrative job? If they're only doing an administrative job, what they deserve is maybe 10 or 15%, not the 50 to 60% that they generally pitch if they're acting as a publisher.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So we're coming up on a break in a couple minutes. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions that are short answered, because otherwise that music's going to start playing on us. So This is kind of off the beaten path. I was going to save to the end, but I figure we'll fill a minute and a half with this one. So outside of your book, are you still getting to get into the studio for yourself?
No, I haven't produced in many years. Now I have an artist rights advocacy company. I act as a consultant. I help artists get out of bad deals, get them money if they need it. Same with producers. And I consult with a lot of attorneys on litigation.
Fantastic. That is so needed. And your website has all of the contact info for you on that?
MosesAvalon.com. It does.
Perfect. And we'll also have links to it.
I have a newsletter, which is free.
Great. Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, we still have 45 seconds on that one. So that was too fast of an answer on that. Let me throw in another one. Because believe me, the next section I know we're going to talk about is going to be a long one. I want to talk about digital streaming rights and all of the new era of the world, of the recording industry, and getting distribution out there and getting your own music out there. So I guess we're coming up on the break. So we'll be back here in a few minutes. I want to thank our sponsors real quickly. Remember, check them out when you get a chance. We have the Blackbird Academy, hands-on training for studio and live sound, based out of Nashville at the Blackbird Studio. Great River Electronics, from tracking to mastering, my favorite electronics. And Source Connect by Source Elements. We'll be right back. This is Sound Experience, powered by Intertalk Radio, your voice of the music biz. I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit mosguitars.com or their Facebook page. MOZEguitars.com, 619-698-1185.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element, affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to record on a Grammy award-winning album? Have you ever wondered what it's like to play in front of a stadium crowd? Have you ever wondered what it's like to be on a world tour? I'm Jackie Bertoni, and I've played with the who's who in the music industry, and I've toured the world. Come join my world, behind the velvet rope, and get into the groove on Jackie's Groove. Live 2 p.m. Mondays and available 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Has your business been appified? Are you tired of doing marketing that doesn't deliver results? Mobile apps build loyalty and quality retention. Your app from UPG Mobile puts your business on their mind and at their fingertips. UPG Mobile will give you a custom app highlighting how you are unique, targeting your message, and improving your open rates. Appify your business and amplify your presence with your customers at upgmobilemarketinggroup.com.
This is Sound Experience, the show that explores the vast world of audio production through the experiences of our guest and the ears of your host, mixing engineer and producer Tim Dolbear.
Hey, welcome back to the second half of Sound Experience, powered by Intertalk Radio, your voice of the music biz. I am your host, Tim Dolbear, coming to you live from Austin, Texas, at Eclectica Studios. We're talking today with Moses Avalon. So, we have all heard the stories and read online all of the stuff about, so-and-so's song was played 85 billion times on Spotify, and they received a check for $4.06. What in the world is going on with this?
Well, this is complicated. How long do we have for this segment?
we have 12 minutes on this segment. That's why I wanted to wait for a. Yeah, I wanted to wait.
No, I hear you now. So the problem is twofold. One, there's a problem of economics in these businesses that are needing to license from major labels. If you're a streaming service, you need inventory, and the inventory are the catalogs of the major labels. Now, you cannot just say to them, well, look, I'll give you X amount of dollars. It's a big negotiation. And you can come in there with the world's greatest model, but the label can't just license to you for less money than they do somebody else, because that leads into a whole bunch of antitrust issues. So if I say to you, well, I'll license the catalog to you for $20 million, and then someone else comes along and I say I can license them for $5 million, then the first person says, hey, you told us $10 million, you're telling them $5 million, and that becomes a big legal problem. So labels have to take a uniform what's called the favored nations attitude towards licensing the catalog. And unfortunately, for the streaming services, the licensing fees can be high from their perspective, because they are looking at millions of dollars in startup fees and billions of dollars rather in startup fees and a whole bunch of other things. And now here comes the label, and they want 30% of our cost goes towards doing the inventory. So you hear the streaming companies complaining and bitching and moaning and saying, the labels are charging us too much. But from the label's point of view, they're only getting roughly 20% of the revenue that's coming in from these services, but they're supplying 100% of the inventory for these services. And so from the label's point of view, you're not charging enough, and from the streaming services point of view, you're charging too much. So that's part of the problem, is who they're fighting over the large fees. The second part of the problem is that the label gets X number of dollars, but the artist only gets a fraction of that percentage. So what the artists are really complaining about, and this is where they should be directing their anger, is not so much at the streaming services for not paying enough, but at the label for the percentage that they end up giving the artist. It ends up being a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny for each play. And so you end up in a situation where it's easy to blame the streaming services, or it's easy to blame, the labels, but it's really a combination of both, of the economics of both situations. And the other part of the problem is that a lot of the labels that a lot of the money that labels receive from streaming services is money they are not required to disclose to their recording artists. It's not like, if you sold 1 million CDs, you can look at the receipts for those CDs and say, okay, well, I sold 1 million CDs, this is my royalties, this is how much money I should get. Most of the money from streaming services is paid in the form of an advance from the streaming service to the label. And it's paid not for one artist, but for an entire catalog of artists. And in every single recording contract that I've seen, there is a clause that says the label does not have to parse out how much money they received for what's called an unallocated receipt. And it used to be an unallocated receipt used to mean if the label received concert tickets, or if an executive received a car in exchange for something, some kind of gift, that wasn't counted against the artist's royalties. But nowadays, unallocated receipts ends up making close to 75% of the revenue that an artist is entitled to. And the label finds himself in this happy accident position of not having to disclose to artists an enormous percentage of their revenue, all because of streaming services. And so the combination of the cost for the catalog, the fact that labels only have to pay artists a fraction of the money, and the fact that the artist is unable to audit even this fraction, creates a perfect storm where the artist ends up getting zip or close to zip.
Do you see any solutions on the horizon? Yeah, I'm here.
I hear the silence at the other end.
It's really stunning because it's like a lot of the stuff I knew about, but obviously since I'm a mix engineer primarily, I'm not dealing with some of this other stuff that I see go by on the internet and in news lines. I get to go, wow, that's terrible, and I just put my nose back to the grindstone in the mix, and that's it.
So is
what
there
are you
a solution?
seeing?
Yes, there's a solution. There's a solution. The solution is not, first of all, we have to stop pointing fingers and blaming the label or blaming this. It's a combination of things. It's an endemic problem. Part of the solution is that artists need to get more educated about what an unallocated receipt is, and their lawyers need to become more aggressive about requiring labels to disclose this income and break it out on their royalty statements so the artists can see exactly how much they're supposed to be entitled to. The streaming companies have to allow the artists direct access to the same data that they give to the major labels, and to any labels, I should say, so that the artists can audit for themselves exactly how many times they're being played instead of just taking the label's word for it. So that's part of the problem, is a contract negotiation point. The other part of the problem is that these streaming companies need to stop paying their executives so much money so that they don't complain so much about how much they're paying the labels. And, on one hand, they're complaining the cost of the inventory is very high. On the other hand, they're paying their executives tens of millions of dollars. Spotify is no exception. Spotify is probably the best example of this problem. They lose money every single month in the books, but their managers and their executives continue to make bonuses each and every month, all the while they complain that they're paying too much money to the labels. So there needs to be a little bit of give and take. It needs to be some humanity needs to be incorporated into this, and the hope is that over time, the long tail component of this ends up bearing it out so that everyone can get paid what they think they're entitled to. There's no guarantee of that, but that's what everybody's hoping for.
As the world turns to more and more streaming for music, you could say distribution, how people are getting their music is more and more through music streaming, doesn't it behoove artists more to go about it as a vanity label by themselves than to sign with anybody?
I think for 90% of the artists out there, the answer is yes.
Yeah. It really seems it. It's a changing landscape.
I encourage all my clients to make direct deals with Spotify and direct deals with Pandora, and I've been encouraging them to do this for the last few years while that opportunity still exists, because in high likelihood, we're going to see a consolidation of streaming services over the next couple of years. We're not going to see like 10 that we have now. It's probably going to end up becoming like 3 or 4. And at that point, labels will end up bottlenecking the ability to have your tracks uploaded into their database in the same way that labels bottlenecked getting your song on rotation on a hit radio on a popular radio station. It will become a vehicle of payola and leverage. And at that point, artists will be shut out from that opportunity. So I tell all my clients, get your stuff up there now or yesterday, and that way at least you're in a database and at least you've opened a door for yourself.
So why have the labels not gone after their own streaming service themselves?
Well, they used to own their own record stores, too, and that didn't work out for them. It just doesn't work out for them. They do own percentages of Spotify, and right now they're in a very cushy position where they're collecting 30% of these companies' revenues anyway. So why take the risk and go into that business themselves?
So it's the old Guitar Center Fender thing. Guitar Center actually owned part of Fender, a big portion of it for a while, I believe back in the 90s this was. And so every guitar that was sold that was a Fender guitar at Guitar Center, money went not only to Fender, but of course back to Guitar Center because Guitar Center owned part of Fender. And then any store that wasn't a Guitar Center that sold a Fender, Guitar Center made money on it. So we're looking at that same type of corporate play.
Only in this case, since no streaming service has actually turned a profit, the label is just losing. They're not making any money off of the streaming service's profits because there aren't any. The hope is that someday there will be some.
Well, and there would be, but of course, they're shuffling it into different areas so they don't show a profit each year.
That may be true. I don't know, but I do know that it's an interesting conflict for the label if they own a percentage of Spotify, and at the same time they're requiring Spotify to pay them more higher rates for the licensing of the catalog. It almost ensures that Spotify will never turn a profit.
Yep, understand. Wow, it's a lot to digest, Again, you dive into a lot of this stuff in the book, in fact, most of it, and I can't recommend it enough to people. I just can't. The amount that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks to dive into mine and read it has just been great, because it took all of my knowledge and just took it to the 10th level or the 10th degree. It's very, very cool.
Oh, thank you.
So, I'm glad that there's someone out there doing this.
I try to give artists the best advice I possibly can based on the information in that book and other information that I can't even publish. And this is what I could have published. Imagine what I'm not even allowed to talk about publicly.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, we're coming up on a break right now. When we get back from the break, I want to dive into some of the audio production members, engineers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers and stuff, and how they play into this area. So we'll be back here in a couple minutes with our last, and that's it. We'll be right back. Sound Experience, powered by Intertalk Radio, your voice of the music biz. We'll talk to you in a minute.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to record on a Grammy award-winning album? Have you ever wondered what it's like to play in front of a stadium crowd? Have you ever wondered what it's like to be on a world tour? I'm Jackie Bertoni, and I've played with the who's who in the music industry, and I've toured the world. Come join my world, Behind the Velvet Rope, and get into the groove on Jackie's Groove. Live 2 p.m. Mondays and available 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element, affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
Has your business been appified? Are you tired of doing marketing that doesn't deliver results? Mobile apps build loyalty and quality retention. Your app from UPG Mobile puts your business on their mind and at their fingertips. UPG Mobile will give you a custom app highlighting how you are unique, targeting your message, and improving your open rates. Appify your business and amplify your presence with your customers at upgmobilemarketinggroup.com.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit moesguitars.com or their Facebook page. mozeguitars.com, 619-698-1185.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Sound Experience, the show that explores the vast world of audio production through the experiences of our guest and the ears of your host, mixing engineer and producer Tim Dolbear.
Hey, welcome back to the last segment of Sound Experience, powered by Intertalk Radio, the voice of the music biz. And I'm actually going to change directions from the questions that we have, because I've actually gotten a couple emails showed up here, and I think it's more important to go this direction. 10 years from now, what are you thinking how do you think things are going to change, and how can we protect ourselves and educate ourselves and get ourselves ready for the next 10 years of this music business?
How can we
There's a lot
protect
there.
ourselves over the next 10 years?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
How do we set ourselves up and get ourselves ready for the different revenue streams that come through, and
Sure.
as well as the new games that are going to get played against us?
Well, the Internet has turned virtually everybody into an author, including engineers. And I think if you're going to be an author, and it seems like we're all being forced to be authors, whether we post on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, newsletters, a website, we're all become authors and publishers. If you're going to be an author and a publisher, it's important you understand how copyright works. And my suggestion would be that if you work in a creative industry, you get a basic understanding of Section 114 of the Copyright Act, which is the section that applies to sound recordings and music,
Mm-hmm.
and understand your contribution to it. So you can understand whether or not, if you're working on a project, that suddenly now you've become an author. Where does the producer or engineer cross over and become an author? And at what point, when you become an author, do you inherit all the valuable rights that are incorporated into copyright? So that's something I think is important, because you can't defend a revenue stream if you don't know you're entitled to it, right?
Good point. Good point.
And so I see a lot of situations where drummers think they're not entitled to a percentage of a song because they didn't write the lyrics of the melody. And a lot of situations where you have a band where the singer writes all the material and sings the material and keeps all that publishing for themselves. Meanwhile, other members of the band are actually entitled to portions of that publishing. Same thing goes for producers, side players. We all in some way end up contributing to that copyright, some to greater degrees than others. You have to understand how that works. And the second thing you need to understand is, once you understand how copyright works, the next step is to understand how performance licensing works. This is not the same as the copyright or the revenue stream that you get from the music selling, okay? This is a revenue stream that you get from the music being performed in public performance money, which is the ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, those organizations that collect that money from the tens of thousands of venues around the country who publicly play music. And what I mean by public performance is, if you're in a stadium watching a ball game and you hear music, that music is being, quote, publicly performed. If you're in a restaurant and you hear music, that music is being publicly performed. And each time that happens, the songwriters or any participants in the copyright are entitled to get paid. If you don't understand how those revenue streams work, you can't fight for them. And I think the number one reason why I see artists, musicians, producers, everybody not getting the money they deserve is because they simply don't know they're entitled to it. And so step one is educating yourself about those revenue streams. My books try to do that, but God knows there's a lot of sources out there that will help you with this.
Yeah, you have entire chapters on ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, and everything you need to know background on that too. So that's obviously the first place to start. First place. So you mentioned a little bit about producers and stuff. One of the sections of the book I was reading, it touched a nerve. It touched a spot that has disappointed me for years, and that's the producers that basically sit back on a lawn chair at their house, and every once in a while someone runs a tape over to them to listen to, and meanwhile they're getting credit for producing that album. And I thought it was a really interesting read to read through that section of how much money and what size percentage that producer's getting for just going, yeah, no, change this, spend 30 seconds thinking about it, and that's it. It's really a strange area of this industry, because I know a lot of great producers that are very, very hands-on in every single area, but I also know of ones that will sit back and allow the work to be done and just collect an enormous check because their name's attached to it. And it's a really, if you're in the audio production side of this, which most of my listeners are, and all of us are, it's a good place to read. Another question would be is, when does an engineering cross that line into producing, where all of a sudden you should be then kind of stopping everything and saying, listen, I've now started wearing another hat, and we should probably start talking about that sure. fact. Sorry for the rhyme.
Well, it depends. No, it's okay. There's a lot of variables that go into at what point an engineer should start feeling entitlement towards that end. It's important to understand what a producer is and what a producer is not. And while some producers are very hands-on, and some producers write arrangements, and some producers play on the recording, none of that is really what the producer is required to do by contract. A producer is required by contract to bring a project in on budget, on time, and to be professionally recorded. That's really his job, or her job. That is their responsibility. And clear samples and things like that. If samples don't get cleared, usually it's the producer that ends up getting called into the record executive's office and saying, hey, this was your responsibility. So while on one hand, as an engineer, you might be sitting there going, well, geez, I'm pressing the record button. I'm deciding what takes are being used. I'm deciding, if we should fade out here or fade out there, or whether that guitar part really should just be lower in the mix. I'm the guy who's making all those decisions. Shouldn't I then be called the producer? Well, the answer is maybe, but maybe not. Because what you're not doing is you're not taking on the liability for the mistakes that might get made and end up costing the artist and the label an enormous amount of money. And so for taking on the responsibility of the liability, that's what the producer is actually getting paid to do. The producer is carrying insurance for that. The producer is the one with a lawyer who looks over everything, with an infrastructure to clear samples, an infrastructure to deal with the studio, and the insurance in case a piano lid drops on the artist's hand and crushes his hand. Who pays for that? Who pays for if the artist turns out the artist is an illegal alien and he's playing in the band and now he's part of the group? Who deals with the immigration issues? So a producer is dealing with all these mundane, banal things that are uncreative. And really, that's what they're earning their fee for. And, of course, there are some producers who are very hands-off with that and just deal with the arrangements. So it's not black and white. It depends what kind of producer you are and what kind of deal it is. On an indie deal, a producer is going to wear many hats. On a major label deal, he's going to wear fewer. And so, yes, it can seem like he's just sitting back in his lawn chair. But in reality, there's stuff going on that you're not being burdened with as the artist or the engineer. You're just dealing with you're allowed to sit in the studio and make your creative decisions and focus on producing a good record. But there's a lot of other banal stuff that goes on in the background that the producer has to deal with.
Right. Very good. Very, very good. We're down to a minute, so I want to say thank you very much for being on the show today, and thank you so much for the book.
It's been my pleasure. I actually have several books. You got the first one, but if you just Google, this is a weird thing, and I don't pay for this, by the way. If you Google the words music business expert, on most days I'll probably be the first link in Google. And my company's actually been around for a long time, and we're not new. And we help artists of all various sizes every day of the week. And my newsletter is free. It's called Moses Opposes. If you go to my website and you click on Email Moses, that goes to me. Yes, I have an assistant, but I review all my own email, and I answer all my own email. So and I'm happy to answer email as long as they're not too long. So keep your emails short. Shorter they are, the quicker they'll get answered.
Great. We'll have links on the Sound Experience website on entertalkradio.com. And I don't get paid to give endorsements whatsoever like other shows tend to be. And I'm telling you, this book is certainly 100% worth its weight in gold. So get yourself a copy at Amazon. And I thank you so much for listening today. So this has been Sound Experience with Tim Dolbear signing off from Eclectica Studios in Austin, Texas. Now, go make some music.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element, affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
Which sandwich is healthy and tasty? Which sandwich can come on bread or in a bowl? Which sandwich comes 51 different ways, so it's always your way? A which sandwich. Stop into our shop in Hazard Center. We're upstairs from the Hazard Center Digiplex. Bring in your movie ticket. We will add a free drink and chips to your sandwich order. Or order online at whichwich.com, and we will have it ready and waiting. WHICH, whichwich.com.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to record on a Grammy award-winning album? Have you ever wondered what it's like to play in front of a stadium crowd? Have you ever wondered what it's like to be on a world tour? I'm Jackie Bertoni, and I've played with the who's who in the music industry, and I've toured the world. Come join my world, behind the velvet rope, and get into the groove on Jackie's Groove. Live 2 p.m. Mondays and available 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit moesguitars.com or their Facebook page. MOZEguitars.com, 619-698-1185.